The city was restless that night. The streets of downtown New York shimmered beneath golden street lamps. Neon lights flickered from cafes that stayed open far too late, and the air carried a faint drizzle that made the pavement gleam like glass. Elena Carter walked quickly, clutching her worn handbag close to her chest. At 23, life had already taught her the weight of responsibility. Since her father's passing and her mother's failing health, Elena had carried the burden of bills, endless part-time jobs, and the suffocating pressure of a future she could barely afford to dream about. Her heels tapped against the wet sidewalk. She wasn't dressed to impress, just a simple blouse, dark jeans, and a coat too thin for the autumn chill. But Elena had always carried something more powerful than wealth: quiet resilience. People noticed her soft brown eyes before they noticed the tiredness in her walk. She was crossing through a busier block than usual, weaving between strangers when it happened. Elena turned a corner too fast. Her shoulder collided hard against the chest of a man built like stone. Her bag nearly slipped from her grip, scattering the contents onto the pavement. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered, kneeling quickly to gather her things. At first, she expected the usual city response: irritation, maybe an angry word. But the man didn't move. He stood towering above her, unmoving, as though the world had just stopped spinning. Elena looked up and froze. His presence was impossible to ignore. Broad shoulders beneath a tailored black coat, sharp jawline shadowed with stubble, dark hair slicked back in perfect control, but it was his eyes that stole her breath, piercing steel gray, cold and dangerous. Yet in that moment, unmistakably fixated on her. He bent down slowly, his gloved hand reaching for the lipstick that had rolled across the sidewalk. His movements were deliberate, calm, like a predator who never rushed. When he handed it to her, his fingers brushed hers lightly, and Elena's pulse quickened. "You should watch where you're going," he said, his voice low, commanding, but not unkind. There was an accent, subtle and foreign, like someone who didn't belong here yet controlled everything he touched. "Right. I'm sorry," Elena whispered, scrambling to her feet. The man studied her face with unnerving intensity. It wasn't a glance. It was an inspection, as though he was memorizing every detail. The curve of her lips, the innocence in her eyes, the way her voice trembled. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Behind him, two men in black suits stood silently near a sleek car parked at the curb. Their postures screamed discipline, danger, loyalty. Elena noticed the way people crossed the street to avoid them, as though instinctively knowing whose presence darkened the corner. Her chest tightened. Who was this man? The stranger finally spoke again, softer this time. "What's your name?" Elena hesitated. Common sense told her to walk away, to disappear into the crowd and never look back. But something about his tone left her rooted in place. "Elena," she answered quietly. A flicker of something unreadable flashed in his gray eyes. Interest? Possession? He nodded once, then turned to his men. "Take her name," he ordered flatly. The suited man nearest to him immediately stepped forward, pulling out a small leather notebook. Elena's stomach dropped. "Wait, what? Why?" she blurted out, clutching her bag tighter. The stranger didn't answer her. Instead, he leaned closer, his cologne sharp and intoxicating, his words brushing against her ear like velvet over steel. "Because," he murmured, "when I find something I want, I don't let it slip away." And just like that, Elena realized she hadn't simply bumped into a man. She had collided with danger itself. The stranger walked toward the car, his guards following like shadows. Before stepping inside, he looked back once, holding her gaze across the dim street. That fleeting moment was a silent promise. Or perhaps a warning. Elena's knees felt weak. She forced herself to breathe, to move, to pretend her world hadn't just shifted entirely. But deep down, she knew. She had just been marked by a man whose name she didn't yet know. Marked by the kind of power no ordinary girl should ever cross. And as the black car disappeared into the night, Elena whispered under her breath, her voice trembling with both fear and a strange, unexplainable pull. "Who was he?" Elena told herself it was nothing, just a strange encounter with a man she'd never see again. After all, New York was full of people. Powerful, wealthy, intimidating. She wasn't part of their world. She worked double shifts at a diner, paid rent on a crumbling apartment, and prayed her mother's medical bills wouldn't swallow them whole. And yet, his face haunted her. Those gray eyes, that voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was already his. She tried to shake it off, but the city refused to let her forget. 3 days later, while Elena balanced a tray of coffee mugs at the diner, she noticed them, 2 men in dark suits sitting by the window. They weren't eating. They weren't talking. They were watching her. Her hands trembled, nearly spilling hot coffee. She hurried into the kitchen, heart racing. It's them, his men. They're here. Hey, Carter, her manager barked. Table 5 needs refills. Quit hiding in the back. Elena plastered on a weak smile and returned to the floor, forcing herself to move naturally. But every step felt heavy under their gaze. When she finally approached their table, one of the men leaned forward. His voice was low, polite, but carried an edge that made her skin crawl. Miss Carter, our boss asked us to check on you. He hopes you're comfortable. Her breath caught. The tray wobbled in her grip. What do you mean? I don't even know your boss. The man's lips curled into the faintest smirk. You will. The other slid a folded card across the table. White, embossed with nothing but a phone number and a single name written in black ink. Damian Moretti. Elena's stomach twisted. She had heard that name whispered before, in news articles and half-said warnings. Moretti. A name tied to real estate empires, hidden fortunes, and rumors darker than anyone dared confirm. Her hand hovered over the card, but she didn't pick it up. I don't want this. The suited man leaned back casually, unbothered. Miss Carter, Mr. Moretti rarely takes interest in anyone outside his world. You should feel honored. The word stung like poison. She left the card on the table and hurried away, but her mind raced through possibilities. Why her? Why a girl with nothing but debts and dreams? That night, she walked home faster than usual, clutching her coat against the wind. The streets felt emptier, yet every shadow seemed alive. She could feel eyes on her, the kind of gaze that stripped away her sense of safety. When she finally reached her apartment building, relief washed over her. But as she dug for her keys, she froze. A sleek black car was parked across the street. The same one from that night. The rear window rolled down slowly. Her breath hitched when she saw him. Damian Moretti. Even in the darkness, he radiated control. He didn't step out of the car. He didn't need to. His eyes met hers, steady and unyielding, like chains wrapping around her without touch. Elena, he said softly, his voice carrying easily across the street. You left my men without an answer. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her keys. I don't want anything to do with you, she blurted, her voice breaking. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Damian tilted his head, as if amused by her defiance. You think you have a choice? He raised a hand. Instantly, one of his guards stepped out of the car. Panic surged through Elena. She stumbled backward toward the building door, her key finally finding the lock. Before she slipped inside, Damian's voice reached her one last time. You can fight me, Elena, but you won't escape me. Not now. The door slammed shut behind her and Elena collapsed against it, her heart hammering. She pressed her palms over her ears, desperate to block out his words. But they had already carved themselves deep inside her. Damian Moretti had chosen her, and she knew. Choices like his were never undone. Sleep was impossible that night. Elena tossed beneath her thin blanket, her mind racing with images of gray eyes and black cars. Every sound from the street below made her flinch. Every shadow outside her window seemed to carry his presence. By morning, her exhaustion showed in the dark circles beneath her eyes. She dragged herself to the diner, hoping the routine of work would bury her fear. But the city had other plans. Halfway through her shift, a bouquet arrived. Roses, dozens of them, deep crimson, wrapped in silk. The scent filled the diner instantly. Customers turned to stare, some even smiling, assuming Elena had a secret admirer. Her heart sank. She already knew who had sent them. The delivery boy set the bouquet on the counter and handed her a card sealed in black wax. Her hands trembled as she broke it open. Inside, in elegant handwriting, were only 4 words. No address, no signature, but she didn't need one. Elena shoved the card into her apron pocket, her pulse wild. She wanted to throw the roses out, to burn the card and pretend it didn't exist. But even as she considered it, she saw them. 2 suited men at the corner booth, pretending to read menus. His men, always there, always watching. By the time her shift ended, the fear had settled into her bones. She hurried home, but the black car was already waiting outside her building. The rear door opened. Damian Moretti himself stepped out. This time he didn't hide behind tinted glass. He stood tall beneath the streetlight, every line of his suit tailored to perfection, his presence commanding the night itself. Elena froze on the sidewalk. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream, but her feet refused to move. Damian walked toward her slowly, unhurried, as though he had all the time in the world. His men lingered behind him, silent shadows. "You ignored my invitation," he said, his voice smooth, deliberate. Elena swallowed hard. "I didn't ask for any of this." Damian studied her quietly, his expression unreadable. Then, to her shock, he smiled. Not a warm smile, but one that carried power, danger, inevitability. "You think fate cares what you asked for?" he murmured. "It put you in my path. Now you belong to me," her chest tightened. "I don't belong to anyone." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Damian's jaw tightened, his gray eyes darkening. He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower, silk wrapped around steel. "Not yet," he said. "But you will." He motioned with his hand. Instantly, one of his guards approached her, extending a phone. The screen displayed a message. Elena's breath hitched. Consequences. The word echoed like a threat, though no details were given. With men like him, none needed to be. Damian leaned closer, his cologne wrapping around her senses. "Don't test me, Elena. Come willingly, or I'll send my men to bring you." Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. For a split second she imagined screaming, calling for help, but she knew no one would dare intervene. Not against him. Finally she whispered, "Why me?" Damian's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. "Because you made me feel something I haven't felt in years." The confession stunned her. It didn't sound rehearsed. It didn't sound like a line. It sounded dangerous, because if it were true, then she wasn't just a target. She was an obsession. Before she could respond, Damian stepped back, his expression once again unreadable. He returned to his car, his men following without a word. The door closed. The engine purred. The black car disappeared into the night, leaving Elena trembling on the sidewalk, clutching her bag like a lifeline. But inside her, a war had begun. Fear battled curiosity. Terror clashed with an unexplainable pull toward the man who had marked her. And though she didn't want to admit it, part of her already knew. At 8 o'clock, she would be in that car, not because she wanted to, but because Damian Moretti had left her no choice. 8 o'clock came faster than Elena wanted. She had spent the entire afternoon pacing her small apartment, staring at the clock, convincing herself she wouldn't go. She could ignore him. She could disappear. But deep down she knew it was useless. Damian Moretti wasn't a man who accepted no. And so, when the sleek black car pulled up outside her building, she was already standing at the curb. The rear door opened. One of his men gestured for her to step in. Elena hesitated only a moment before sliding inside. The interior smelled of leather and power. Damian sat across from her, his suit flawless, his posture relaxed yet commanding. The dim lights of the city flickered across his sharp features as the car rolled forward. He studied her in silence for several minutes, the weight of his gaze pressing against her skin until she finally spoke. "I don't know why I'm here," she said softly. Damian's lips curved faintly. "You're here because I asked. And because you're curious," her cheeks heated. She hated that he wasn't entirely wrong. The car pulled up to an exclusive Italian restaurant. one of those hidden places with no signs, guarded doors, and a clientele whose names never appeared on public lists. Inside, the lighting was golden, the music soft, the tables spread far apart to guarantee privacy. Damian guided her to a corner table with a perfect view of the entire room. Of course he would sit where no one could approach without him noticing. Power was second nature to him. A waiter hurried over, bowing slightly. "Mr. Moretti, what will you have tonight?" Damian didn't look at the menu. He named 2 dishes in fluent Italian, then gestured toward Elena. "And bring her a glass of red." Something bold. When the waiter left, silence settled again. Damian leaned forward, resting his elbows lightly on the table, his gray eyes never leaving hers. "Tell me about yourself," he said simply. Elena blinked. Of all the things she expected him to say, that wasn't it. "There's nothing to tell," she murmured. "I work, I take care of my mom. That's all." "Wrong," Damian said, his voice smooth but firm. "There's always more. Everyone has layers. Everyone has secrets." His words made her shift uncomfortably. She wanted to push back, to remind him she wasn't some puzzle for him to solve. But his intensity left her trapped, as though the truth itself might spill out if she wasn't careful. When the wine arrived, Damian handed her the glass himself. Their fingers brushed again, deliberate this time. Elena's heart skipped. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay strong. "You could have anyone. Women who are richer, prettier, not ordinary like me." Damian's jaw tightened. For a moment, his mask slipped, revealing something raw beneath. "Because they don't matter," he said quietly. "You do." The words unsettled her more than threats ever could. Dinner passed with a strange rhythm, him asking questions, her answering reluctantly, his gaze piercing through every hesitation. And though Elena told herself she hated it, she found herself leaning in, drawn by the gravity of his attention. When dessert arrived, Damian finally spoke words that stole her breath. "I want you by my side. Elena, you belong in my world now." Her fork clattered against the plate. "Your world? I don't even know who you really are." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You know enough, and soon you'll know everything." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance. 2 men barged into the restaurant, shouting in a language Elena didn't understand. The waitstaff froze. Patrons ducked, but Damian didn't flinch. He rose slowly, towering with unshakable calm, his men materializing at his side in seconds. The intruders pointed at him, voices sharp with anger. Damian's lips curved into a deadly smile. "Stay behind me," he murmured to Elena. And for the first time she realized, dinner wasn't just about her. It was also about showing her exactly what kind of man he was. A man who ruled not with fear alone, but with absolute control in the face of chaos. The restaurant fell silent, broken only by the harsh voices of the 2 intruders. Chairs scraped as terrified guests pressed themselves against the walls, whispering Damian's name like a warning. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to disappear beneath the table, but Damian's steady hand on her arm kept her still. His touch wasn't frantic. It was grounding, commanding. "Stay," he said, his voice low but absolute. The men at the entrance stormed closer, their eyes locked on Damian. One of them spat out words in rapid Italian, his voice laced with hatred. Elena couldn't understand, but the venom was unmistakable. Damian's expression never wavered. He answered in the same language, calm and cutting, like a man who knew he owned the room. But whatever he said only fueled their rage. The taller intruder pulled a knife from his coat, the blade gleaming under the golden light. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Elena froze. Her throat went dry. This wasn't just an argument. This was violence waiting to spill into blood. Damian's men reacted instantly, stepping forward with practiced precision. One pulled his jacket back just enough to reveal the dark outline of a weapon at his hip. The message was clear. One wrong move, and the intruders wouldn't leave alive. Yet Damian lifted a hand, stopping his men. His eyes narrowed on the knife-wielding man, and then he smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips. "You came into my house with that," he said, switching back to English so Elena would hear. "In front of her?" The way he emphasized the last word sent a chill through Elena. as if her mere presence had turned this from business into something personal. The man lunged forward. It happened so fast Elena barely had time to scream. Damian moved with a predator's grace, sidestepping the blade and slamming the attacker's wrist against the edge of the table. The knife clattered to the floor. In the same breath, Damian twisted his arm behind his back and shoved him face first against the polished wood, his strength effortless, his control absolute. The second intruder cursed and reached inside his coat, but Damian's guard was faster, pinning him against the wall with a forearm to the throat. The entire restaurant held its breath. Damian leaned close to the man he had pinned, his voice a lethal whisper Elena could barely hear. "You made a mistake. You should have stayed in the shadows. Now, everyone here will remember what happens when someone crosses me." The man writhed, but Damian pressed harder, his grip unyielding. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The sheer force of his calm was more terrifying than any shout. Finally, he shoved the intruder to the ground. His men dragged both of them toward the exit, their protests muffled by bruised pride and fear. Silence lingered for a beat, then whispers rippled through the diners. No one dared meet Damian's eyes. Elena sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. She had just watched him dismantle a man twice his size with terrifying ease. There had been no hesitation, no doubt, just raw, calculated dominance. Damian adjusted his cufflinks as though nothing had happened. Then he turned back to Elena, his expression softening only for her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, though her body still trembled. I don't understand. Who were they?" "Enemies," Damian said simply. He reached for his glass of wine, sipping it as though the night hadn't just shifted into violence. "My world is full of them." Elena stared at him, her voice breaking. "And you dragged me into it." His gaze locked with hers, steady and unyielding. "No, Elena, fate dragged you into it. I'm just the one who refuses to let you go." The words wrapped around her like chains. She wanted to deny it, to scream that she had a choice, but deep down, she knew. Whatever this was, whatever force pulled Damian toward her, it was stronger than her fear. When they left the restaurant, the city lights felt sharper, the night colder. Damian guided her into the waiting car, his hand gentle at the small of her back, despite the violence she'd just witnessed. As the car pulled away, Elena sat in silence, her heart torn between two truths. She should run as far and fast as she could, and yet, some dangerous, unexplainable part of her didn't want to. The city blurred past the car windows, streaks of neon and rain-soaked light. But Elena couldn't focus on any of it. Her hands twisted in her lap, trembling as Damian sat calmly beside her, as though the violent encounter at the restaurant had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Her voice finally cracked the silence. "Take me home." Damian's gray eyes shifted toward her, unreadable. "Home isn't safe anymore." Elena flinched. "Safe? I was safe before you." "No," he said simply, his tone firm, cutting through her denial. "You only thought you were safe. Tonight proved otherwise. People saw you with me. That makes you a target." Her heart dropped. The weight of his words crushed the fragile walls of normalcy she had been clinging to. "I don't want to be your target," she whispered, her throat tight. Damian leaned closer, his cologne dark and intoxicating. "You're not my target, Elena. You're mine." The car stopped in front of her apartment. Relief rushed through her, until she saw the black SUV parked across the street, two of Damian's men standing guard in the shadows. Her stomach twisted. "They're watching my building?" Damian nodded, unbothered. "You'll have protection. 24 hours a day." "That's not protection. It's prison," she snapped, her voice breaking. For the first time, Damian's expression hardened. He cupped her chin gently but firmly, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Understand this. I don't cage what I want. I protect it. And I want you, Elena." Her breath caught, tears stinging her eyes. She hated how her pulse quickened, hated how some traitorous part of her leaned into his touch, despite the fear burning inside her. When the car door opened, she stumbled out into the night air, desperate for space. But the guard's presence made her feel anything but free. She hurried upstairs, slamming the apartment door shut behind her. For the first time in days, silence surrounded her. She collapsed onto the couch, pressing her face into her hands. Think. Elena, you have to think. She grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling as she scrolled through contacts. Friends, co-workers, anyone. But who could she call? Who would dare stand against a man like Damian Moretti? Her thumb hovered over the number for the police. Logic screamed at her to press it, to report everything, but then she remembered his words. You're already a target. And worse. She believed him. Her phone buzzed suddenly. A message from an unknown number. Lock your window. Left side. Elena's chest tightened. She rushed to the small bedroom, her eyes darting to the window overlooking the alley. It was open an inch. The curtain swayed in the draft. Her trembling hand slammed it shut, locking it firmly. She stumbled back, heart pounding. How did he know? Was someone watching her even now? Her phone buzzed again. Good girl. Sleep. Elena dropped the phone onto the bed as though it had burned her. Anger flared through her fear. He was controlling her life piece by piece, stripping away her choices until every move belonged to him. She pressed her forehead against the cool wall, whispering to herself, You have to get away. Somehow, some way, you have to run. But even as the words left her lips, she heard the sound of tires outside. She peeked through the blinds. The black car hadn't left. His men were still there. Watching. Waiting. And Elena knew the truth with bone-deep certainty. Running wasn't an option. Not anymore. The night stretched endlessly. Elena sat by the window, staring at the black SUV parked beneath the streetlight. Damian's men hadn't moved for hours, their silhouettes silent and unshakable. She couldn't live like this, trapped, monitored, owned. Her chest tightened with every passing second, until finally, the fear gave way to resolve. I have to run. At dawn, the city was gray and quiet, the sidewalks slick from a night of rain. Elena slipped out of her building through the back entrance, her hood pulled low, her footsteps soft. She clutched a small backpack, just cash, her ID, and the bare essentials. If she could make it to the bus station, she could be gone before Damian even realized. Her pulse raced as she turned corner after corner, weaving through narrow streets. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe she could do it. Maybe she could vanish into the crowd. But hope shattered the moment a sleek black car slid silently into view at the end of the block. Her stomach dropped. The rear door opened. Damian stepped out. Even in the early morning haze, he looked untouched by exhaustion. His suit was immaculate, his gaze cold fire that locked onto her instantly. Elena. His voice was calm, but beneath it pulsed something darker. Disappointment. She stumbled back a step. I was just running. The word cut sharper than any blade. He advanced slowly, each step deliberate, as if he already knew she had nowhere to go. His men fanned out around her, blocking the alleyways, silent as shadows. Elena's throat closed. Her hands trembled as she clutched the straps of her backpack. You can't keep me like this. I'm not yours to own. For the first time, Damian's calm cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with fury. You think I don't know what's mine? He snapped, his voice echoing in the empty street. You think I'll let you slip away because you're scared? He stopped just inches from her, his presence overwhelming. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Not rough enough to hurt, but firm enough to remind her of his strength. You don't get to run from me, Elena, he said, his tone low, dangerous. Not after what I've already risked. Her heart pounded. Tears stung her eyes, but anger burned through her fear. What did I ever do to you? Why me? Damian's grip softened slightly, his voice dropping into something raw, almost vulnerable. Because the moment you collided with me on that street, I couldn't stop seeing you. I couldn't stop wanting you. And when I want something, his eyes bored into hers. I take it. Her breath hitched. His words should have terrified her, and they did. But deep inside, something else stirred. Something she didn't want to admit. Damian exhaled slowly, controlling his temper, before releasing her wrist. He glanced at her backpack, then back into her tear-filled eyes. You're scared. I understand that, he said softer now. But running won't save you. It will only destroy you. With a gesture, his men melted back toward the car, waiting. Damian didn't force her forward. But his meaning was clear. Elena stood frozen, torn between two impossible truths. Going with him meant surrendering control. Running again meant declaring war against a man who always won. Finally, with her shoulders shaking, she stepped past him and toward the waiting car. Damian's lips curved faintly, not in triumph, but in something far more dangerous. Possession. As the car door closed behind her, Elena realized with bone-deep dread that her first attempt at freedom had failed, and worse. Damian Moretti now knew just how badly she wanted to escape. The car ride was silent, except for the hum of the engine. Elena sat pressed against the door, staring out at the blur of city lights giving way to dark, winding roads. Every mile carried her farther from the life she knew, and deeper into Damian's control. When the car finally slowed, her breath caught. Before her rose a mansion hidden in the hills, its towering iron gates swinging open as if the house itself were alive and expecting her. The driveway stretched long and winding, lined with old trees whose branches twisted like sentinels. The mansion loomed, dark stone walls, glowing windows and balconies that seemed to watch her every move. It was beautiful, yes, but also suffocating. A palace and a prison all in one. The car stopped, and a guard opened her door. She hesitated, but Damian's hand appeared, palm up, waiting. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between command and invitation. With trembling reluctance, she placed her hand in his. His touch was warm, steady, unyielding. "Welcome home," he said quietly, though Elena caught the double edge of the words. Inside, the mansion was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers spilled golden light across marble floors. The air smelled faintly of leather, wood, and something darker, like secrets woven into the walls. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of wealth. Oil paintings, gilded mirrors, velvet drapes. But beneath the glamour, she sensed the weight of something dangerous. Damian guided her through hallways until they entered a vast sitting room. A fire roared in the fireplace, casting long shadows across the high ceilings. Elena stood in awe and dread, hugging her arms tightly around herself. "This isn't necessary," she whispered. "I don't belong here." Damian studied her, his hands clasped behind his back, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "Don't you?" he countered softly. "Everything in this house has its place. And now so do you," her pulse hammered. "I'm not some thing to be put on a shelf." That earned the faintest hint of a smile. He approached slowly, his voice calm, almost tender. "No, you're not a thing. You're the first person in years who's looked at me without fear. The first person who dared walk away." Elena's breath hitched as he came closer, his presence overwhelming. "And yet," he continued, "you're still here. Fate doesn't make mistakes." She shook her head, defiance rising through the fear. "This isn't fate. It's your obsession. You dragged me here, Damian. Don't twist it into destiny." The smile faded. His jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Then Damian leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that chilled her skin. "Call it whatever you like, Elena. Obsession, fate. But understand this. There's no world where I let you go." Her knees weakened, but she held his gaze. Somewhere deep in his words was a confession. Loneliness, hunger, maybe even pain. But wrapped around it was a cage she couldn't break. A knock at the door broke the moment. One of his men stepped inside, bowing his head. "It's ready, sir." Damian nodded, then extended his hand toward Elena again. "Come, there's more I want to show you." Every instinct screamed at her not to take it. But with guards at every door, and Damian's unrelenting gaze on her, resistance felt useless. She placed her hand in his once more, and together they walked deeper into the mansion, into the heart of his empire. The fire crackled behind them, shadows flickering along the walls, shadows that seemed to whisper a truth Elena couldn't ignore. She wasn't just inside Damian's home now. She was inside his world, and he had no intention of letting her leave. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, casting pale gold across Elena's room. The bed she woke in was softer than anything she had ever known, the quilt heavy and warm. For a fleeting second, she almost forgot where she was. Then the memory crashed back. Damian. The car. The gates closing behind her. Her chest tightened. She wasn't a guest here. She was a possession. Elena rose and padded across the room, her bare feet silent against the polished wood floor. The windows looked out over sprawling gardens, meticulously trimmed hedges, marble fountains, and guards patrolling in the distance. Even beauty was a cage. A knock at the door startled her. She stiffened. "Who is it?" The door cracked open and a woman stepped inside. Mid-40s, kind eyes, hair streaked with silver tied neatly back. She carried a tray of breakfast, fruit, eggs, steaming tea. "You must be Elena," the woman said softly. Her voice carried warmth, a human contrast to the cold perfection of the mansion. "I'm Marisol. I help take care of the household." Elena blinked. "So you're not here to guard me?" Marisol's smile was small but knowing. "No, dear, though you'd be wise not to test the men outside." She set the tray on a table and studied Elena with something close to pity. "You look frightened, but you're safe here." Elena's laugh was bitter. "Safe? He kidnapped me." Marisol's eyes flickered toward the door before she leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Damian doesn't see it that way. When he chooses someone, he doesn't let go. No matter what it costs." The words chilled Elena to the bone, but beneath Marisol's caution, Elena sensed compassion, a tiny lifeline in this suffocating house. "Why are you telling me this?" Elena asked. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped in someone else's world," Marisol replied. She straightened quickly as footsteps echoed down the hall. "Eat something. You'll need your strength." She slipped out before Elena could ask more. Moments later, the door opened again, this time without a knock. Damian entered, tall and composed, a dark contrast against the soft light. His eyes immediately landed on her. "You're awake," he said smoothly. "Good. I want you to see the house." Elena's spine stiffened. "And if I refuse?" He arched a brow, amused by her defiance. "Then you'll see it anyway. But I prefer when you walk beside me." Every nerve screamed not to comply. Yet she forced her legs to move. The mansion unfolded around her in a blur of grandeur. Sweeping staircases, libraries stacked with leather-bound books, hallways lined with portraits of men who shared Damian's sharp jawline and cold eyes, generations of power, generations of violence. Finally, he led her to a massive oak door. When it opened, Elena froze. Inside was an office, dimly lit, walls covered in maps, ledgers, and photographs. On the desk sat files stamped with police insignias, stacks of cash, and a gleaming handgun. Her stomach twisted. She didn't need anyone to tell her what this was. She had stepped into the beating heart of Damian Moretti's empire. He watched her closely, gauging every flicker of emotion. "You see now," he said quietly. "I don't play games, Elena. The world bends because I make it bend." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "And what am I supposed to be? A trophy in your kingdom?" Damian's gaze softened, just slightly. "No, you're more than that." His voice dropped, almost reverent. "You're the only thing in this house I didn't buy or build. The only thing I couldn't control, until now." Elena's heart raced as she tore her eyes from his and glanced around the office. Papers, photos, secrets. For the first time, she thought, maybe this place holds answers. Maybe even a way out. But one thing was certain. If Damian discovered her curiosity, he wouldn't forgive it. The mansion at night was a different creature altogether. Shadows stretched long across the marble floors, and the chandeliers glimmered faintly like watchful eyes. Elena moved silently, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She had waited until Damian's footsteps faded down the west wing, until the guards outside her door grew lax, murmuring to each other. Then she slipped out barefoot, her breath held tight in her chest. Every corridor seemed endless, every corner a trap. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Freedom, weakness, or simply proof that Damian wasn't the god he pretended to be. Her hand brushed along the cool wall until she noticed it. A thin draft, seeping from behind a panel of bookshelves. Curiosity outweighed fear. She pressed her fingers along the edges until the latch clicked. With a soft groan, the shelf swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. The air was colder here, damp with secrets. The passage led down a tight staircase, stone replacing marble, the elegance of the mansion giving way to something rawer, older. At the bottom, Elena found a heavy wooden door. She hesitated, every instinct warning her to turn back, but she couldn't. Not now. The door creaked open. Inside was a room unlike the rest of the mansion. No chandeliers, no polished wood, just bare walls lined with boxes and shelves, each stuffed with documents, photographs, weapons. Her pulse raced as she scanned the shelves. She pulled open a folder. Inside were surveillance photos, streets, businesses, faces circled in red ink. Police officers, judges, politicians, every one of them marked. Her stomach knotted. This wasn't just wealth. This was control. Damian's reach was everywhere. And then, at the bottom of the pile, she found something that froze her blood. A photograph of her. Not from the day she bumped into him. Not from the night he took her. Older. Months ago. She was walking out of the bookstore near her apartment, holding a bag of groceries, completely unaware of the camera. Her breath hitched. He's been watching me. For months. A sound snapped her head up. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Panic surged. She shoved the folder back, closing the box as fast as her shaking hands allowed. She ducked behind a shelf just as the door creaked open wider. Light spilled into the room. Damian's silhouette filled the doorway, broad shoulders, sharp presence. He didn't step inside immediately. He lingered as though he could sense the air had shifted. Elena. His voice was low, dangerous. What are you doing? Her chest seized. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The silence stretched like a blade. Finally, Damian stepped inside. His eyes swept over the room, sharp and calculating. Elena pressed herself deeper into the shadows, praying the darkness would hide her. But Damian's gaze lingered on the shelf where the folder had been. Slowly, he reached for it. He flipped it open. His jaw tightened. And then, without looking up, he said softly, too softly, "Come out." Elena's heart nearly stopped. For a moment, she thought of staying hidden, of forcing herself into silence. But when he turned his head, his eyes found hers instantly in the dark. There was no escaping him. With trembling steps, she emerged from behind the shelf. Damian closed the folder, his expression unreadable. He held it loosely in one hand, but his eyes burned into her. "You're braver than I thought," he murmured. "Or more foolish," Elena swallowed hard. "You've been watching me." For months, he didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice like velvet over steel. "I told you, Elena. The day we collided wasn't chance. It was inevitability. I already knew you. I already chose you." Her knees weakened. The walls felt like they were closing in. Damian reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, but the meaning behind it was terrifying. "You belong to me, and the sooner you accept that, the safer you'll be." Elena's voice shook. "And if I never accept it?" A dangerous smile curved his lips. "Then I'll just have to make sure you do." The mansion grew heavier with each passing day, its halls colder, its walls thicker. Damian's presence was everywhere, his voice echoing in the staff's hurried movements, his shadow stretching into every corner Elena tried to claim for herself. He no longer asked her to join him for meals. He expected it. He no longer offered his hand when she entered a room. He took hers without question. Every gesture carried a message. "You belong to me." At dinner, he sat across the long table, his dark gaze never leaving her. Silverware clinked softly against fine china, but the silence between them was sharper than steel. "You've stopped fighting," Damian said finally, his tone unreadable. "Good." Elena lifted her chin, her voice quiet but edged with fire. "Don't mistake silence for surrender." A faint smile touched his lips, as if her defiance both infuriated and thrilled him. "One day you'll learn there's no difference." The words sank into her like poison. That night, Elena returned to her room with her chest aching. She shut the door, pressing her back against it, letting the facade of strength crack. She couldn't keep living like this, caught in a web she couldn't break. A soft knock startled her. "Elena?" Marisol's voice, hushed, urgent. Elena rushed to open the door. The older woman slipped inside quickly, her eyes darting down the hall before closing it behind her. "You shouldn't be here," Elena whispered. If Damian— Shh, Marisol interrupted gently. He's in his office. He won't know. Her hands trembled as she pulled something from her apron pocket, a small slip of paper. Elena frowned. What's this? Marisol pressed it into her palm. A map of the servants' passages. They run through the house, hidden behind the walls. If you need to move unseen, it may help you. Elena's throat tightened. For the first time in days, a spark of hope flickered. Why are you helping me? Marisol's eyes softened, but pain shadowed them too. Because once, long ago, I was where you are now, and no one helped me. The confession cut deep. Elena squeezed the map, her hands shaking. Did you escape? Marisol looked away, her silence the only answer. Before Elena could press further, footsteps echoed faintly in the hall. Damian's voice, deep and commanding, drifted closer. Marisol's eyes widened. She grabbed Elena's wrist, whispering fiercely, "Hide it, now." Elena shoved the map under her pillow just as the door opened. Damian stepped in, his presence filling the room instantly. His gaze swept from Marisol to Elena, sharp as a blade. What's going on? His voice was calm, but beneath it coiled suspicion. Marisol lowered her head, bowing slightly. I was checking if she needed anything before bed, sir. Damian's eyes lingered on her for a long, tense moment. Then he shifted his gaze to Elena. And? Did she? Elena forced her voice to steady. No, I'm fine. He studied her, as though peeling back layers, searching for the truth. Finally, he nodded slowly. Good, then she won't need to disturb you again at night. The dismissal was cold, final. Marisol bowed once more and slipped out, her eyes flicking briefly to Elena with a silent warning. Be careful. Damian closed the door behind her, then turned back to Elena. His expression softened, but only slightly. You look tired, he murmured, stepping closer. You should rest. He brushed a hand along her cheek, and though his touch was gentle, Elena felt the weight of chains in it. When he finally left, silence swallowed the room again. Elena collapsed onto the bed, her heart pounding. Beneath her pillow, the map waited, fragile, dangerous, alive with possibility. For the first time, Elena didn't feel entirely powerless. She had a weapon. And maybe, just maybe, a chance. The mansion slept under a blanket of silence. Even the guards seemed distant, their footsteps fading into the far wings of the house. Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her fingers curled tightly around the folded map hidden beneath her pillow. Her heart pounded. Now or never. She slipped from the bed, pulling on a dark sweater and soft shoes. The floorboards creaked faintly under her weight, every sound amplified in her fear. She moved to the corner of the room where the map indicated a narrow panel. With trembling hands, she pressed along the wall. A click. The panel swung inward, revealing darkness. The air inside was colder, damp with age. Elena ducked inside, pulling the panel shut behind her. The silence changed instantly, heavier, muffled, as though she'd stepped into the house's lungs. The passage was narrow, lit only by faint cracks of moonlight bleeding through hidden vents. Dust coated the walls, cobwebs brushing her arms as she moved forward. Each step echoed softly, as if the mansion itself were listening. Her fingers traced the paper map. Left at the junction, then a staircase down. The servants must have used these paths long ago, but now they were forgotten, except by Marisol. As she crept deeper, she began to hear faint voices through the walls. At one point she paused, pressing her ear against the wood. Damian's voice. Low, commanding. The shipment leaves tomorrow. No mistakes. If anyone interferes, remove them. Another man answered nervously. And the police? They won't be a problem, Damian replied coldly. I own them. Elena's stomach twisted. His power reached farther than she imagined. She forced herself onward until she found a small grate. She peered through and froze. Below her stretched the library, its tall shelves glowing under soft lamps. Damian sat at a desk, his jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled up. Papers and ledgers lay scattered across the surface. He leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose, his expression tired, almost human. For a fleeting second, Elena saw him not as the untouchable Mafia Boss, but as a man burdened by shadows. But the illusion shattered when he reached into a drawer and pulled out a gun, checking it with the casual ease of someone who lived by it. Elena backed away from the grate, her breath shaking. She couldn't let herself forget who he truly was. She followed the passage farther until it led to another hidden door. When she eased it open, fresh air swept over her. She gasped softly. A garden. Moonlight bathed the hedges and fountains, the air cool and alive with the scent of roses. She had found an exit, a way out. But before hope could root itself, a figure stepped from the shadows. A guard. Elena froze. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing out here?" Her mind raced. If he raised the alarm, Damian would know everything. I couldn't sleep," she stammered. "I just wanted air." The guard studied her for a long moment, suspicion etched across his face. Then, to her shock, he lowered his voice. "Go back inside, now, before he notices." Elena blinked. "You're not going to tell him?" The guard's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. He doesn't forgive. Ever. Don't test him." He stepped aside, gesturing sharply toward the door. Elena hesitated, then slipped back through the panel, her chest pounding. She followed the passages in reverse, every step heavier with the realization that even those who might pity her wouldn't dare help. Back in her room, she collapsed onto the bed, clutching the map to her chest. The mansion wasn't just guarded by walls and men, it was guarded by fear, and fear was harder to break than iron. Still, she had seen the garden. She had seen the possibility, and that was enough to keep hope alive. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, but Elena felt no warmth. She sat at the edge of the grand dining table, untouched breakfast before her. Damian entered moments later, his presence filling the room like a storm front. He moved with controlled ease, his tailored suit flawless, his dark eyes locked on her. Yet something in his gaze had shifted. He was watching her differently now, closer, sharper. "You didn't sleep," he said. Not a question, but a statement. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. "Maybe it's because I'm locked inside a gilded cage." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You have everything here. Comfort, protection, safety. Why make it sound like a prison?" She leaned forward, anger burning through her fear. "Because that's what it is. You took away my choices." "That's not protection, it's control." The words hung between them like a blade. For a moment, silence stretched, taut and dangerous. Then Damian moved, slowly, deliberately, circling the table until he stood before her. He rested both hands on the polished surface, leaning down until their faces were inches apart. "You think I don't see it?" His voice dropped, low and sharp. "The way you look at the doors, the way you listen when you think I'm not watching. You've been searching for cracks in my world, Elena." Her stomach knotted. He knew. She tried to hold steady. "And what if I have? What are you going to do? Lock me tighter? Threaten me?" His eyes darkened, a storm raging just beneath the surface. "Don't tempt me." The air crackled with tension. Elena's pulse thundered, but for once she didn't back down. "You're obsessed," she whispered. "That's not love, Damian. It's possession. You don't want me, you want control over me." Damian froze, her words cutting deeper than she expected. For a brief instant, his mask slipped. Pain flickered in his expression, raw and unguarded. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He straightened, his tone turning icy. "You think you understand me? You don't. You've seen glimpses, shadows. But you have no idea what I've done to protect what's mine." Her chest tightened. "I don't want to be yours." The words struck him like a slap. His hand curled into a fist against the table, the wood groaning under the pressure. The fire in his eyes was fury and something else, something dangerously close to heartbreak. "You can lie to yourself," he said, his voice sharp as glass. "But you can't lie to me. I see it in you, the way you tremble when I'm close, the way your breath catches. You feel it too." Elena's breath hitched, anger and unwanted truth warring inside her. She hated that part of her body betrayed her around him, hated that her heart raced not just from fear but from something darker, something she refused to name. "I feel nothing but fear," she spat. Damian studied her, silent, unreadable. Then he stepped back, his voice controlled but colder than she'd ever heard. "Be careful. Elena." Push me too far, and you'll learn what it means to lose even the illusion of freedom." He turned sharply and left the room, his footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Elena sat frozen, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. She had stood her ground. She had spoken the truth. But deep inside, she couldn't shake the terrifying thought. What if he was right? The night had teeth. Elena stood in the back of Damian's black SUV, the city lights flashing past like fleeting sparks. She hadn't been allowed to ask questions, only ordered to come with him. The silence inside the car pressed heavy on her chest. Damian sat beside her, calm, collected, his profile cut sharp against the glow of passing neon. He hadn't spoken since they left the mansion, but his presence radiated intensity. Elena knew tonight wasn't just another one of his shadowy errands. This was something different. Finally, he broke the silence. "I want you to see what I see, what it means to walk in my world." Her pulse quickened. "Why me?" His eyes slid toward her, dark and unreadable. "Because you're already part of it, whether you admit it or not." The SUV slowed to a stop outside an upscale restaurant. The place gleamed with marble columns, glittering chandeliers visible through the tall windows. But Elena's stomach twisted, not from beauty, but from the subtle menace that seemed to hum in the air. Inside, the maitre d' greeted Damian with nervous respect. They were led not to the main dining room, but to a private suite at the back. A long table stretched across the room, already occupied by suited men with cold eyes and tighter smiles. Elena's heart stuttered. She recognized what this was. A meeting of powerful men. Mafia man Damian pulled out a chair for her at his side, his hand firm on her back as if guiding her into position. She sat, her skin prickling under the weight of every gaze in the room. The men greeted Damian, voices low and heavy with respect. But their eyes flicked to Elena, curiosity and calculation simmering beneath their calm exteriors. Damian's voice cut through the tension. "This is Elena, no explanation, no title, just her name, but spoken with the weight of ownership." A ripple of surprise passed among the men. One of them, older, with silver at his temples, leaned forward. "You brought her here? Bold choice, Damian. Very bold." Elena felt her throat tighten, but she forced herself to hold steady. She could feel Damian watching her, not just the men. This was a test. The meeting unfolded. Discussions of territories, alliances, threats. Elena barely understood the details, but the air was charged, every word laced with danger. She kept her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm, though inside her nerves screamed. At one point, a younger man across the table smirked at her, his eyes lingering too long. "She's beautiful," he said, his tone mocking. "But fragile things don't last long in our world." Before Elena could react, Damian's hand slammed onto the table, making the glasses rattle. His glare cut through the man like a blade. "Choose your words carefully." The smirk vanished. Silence fell. Damian leaned back, but his hand brushed Elena's, a silent reminder. "You're under my shield." "My claim," Elena's heart hammered. She hated the way her skin tingled where his hand touched hers. Hated that part of her felt protected, even as she despised his control. When the meeting ended, the men filed out, each offering Damian respectful nods. Some gave Elena one last glance, filled with speculation. Back in the SUV, Elena exhaled shakily. "Why did you bring me there? To scare me?" Damian studied her, his voice measured. "To see if you'd break. To see if you'd stand beside me, not just against me." Her voice wavered with frustration. "I'm not part of your empire, Damian. I don't belong in that world." He leaned closer, his eyes burning into hers. "You already do, Elena. Every step you take, every breath you draw inside my reach, you're bound to it. Bound to me." His words sank deep, terrifying and intoxicating at once. She wanted to deny it, to scream at him, but her silence betrayed her. Damian's lips curved in the faintest smile, as though he'd won a battle she hadn't realized she was fighting. The mansion was quiet that night. Too quiet. Elena stood by the bedroom window, staring out at the moonlit gardens below. Somewhere deep inside, her spirit clawed against the invisible chains Damian had wrapped around her. His world was suffocating her, and if she didn't act soon, she would lose herself completely. Her eyes drifted to the iron gates beyond the drive. Guards patrolled lazily, their flashlights sweeping the grounds. She memorized their timing, their routes, every small crack in their vigilance. Her heart pounded. She had to try. She moved silently, slipping into flat shoes she had hidden beneath the bed. She wrapped herself in a dark shawl and eased the bedroom door open. The hallway stretched long and shadowy, the only sound the faint ticking of a distant clock. Step by step, she descended the grand staircase, avoiding the patches of moonlight spilling across the marble. Every creak of the floor threatened to betray her, but she pressed on, adrenaline driving her forward. When she reached the back door, her trembling hands fumbled with the lock. Finally, it clicked open. A rush of cool night air hit her face. Freedom, so close she could almost taste it. She darted into the garden, her feet whispering against the grass. She kept low, weaving between hedges, moving toward the fence where she had seen a weak spot in the patrol. Her pulse soared. Just a little further. Just a few more steps. Going somewhere? The voice slid through the night like silk and steel. Elena froze, her body locking with dread. Damian stepped out from the shadows, his suit jacket unbuttoned, his expression unreadable. Behind him, 2 guards lingered silently, like shadows awaiting command. Her throat went dry. How long? He moved closer, each step deliberate. Did you really think I wouldn't know? Every guard reports to me. Every lock, every camera. Nothing happens here without me seeing it. Elena's chest heaved. Anger flared hot against her fear. So I'm your prisoner forever? Is that it? You'll never let me go? His gaze darkened, but his voice stayed calm, almost gentle. Not prisoner, protected. She shook her head violently, tears stinging her eyes. Don't twist this. You stole my freedom. You stole me. Damian stopped inches from her, his shadow engulfing her in the moonlight. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a low, steady voice, he murmured, Do you think I wanted this? That I planned to fall for a stranger in the street? I don't know what spell you cast on me, Elena. But the moment you collided with my world, there was no turning back. Not for me, and not for you. Her breath hitched. She wanted to scream at him, strike him, but her body betrayed her with trembling confusion. His words carried weight, raw and unvarnished. Damian, she whispered, her voice breaking. He lifted her chin with one finger, forcing her eyes to meet his. Run again if you want. I'll always find you, because whether you hate me or not, you're mine. The certainty in his tone sent shivers down her spine. Half fear, half something she couldn't admit, finally. He turned, motioning for the guards to retreat. He faced her once more, his voice softer but no less dangerous. You'll learn. Elena, you can fight me, but you can't escape what binds us. With that, he walked back toward the mansion, leaving her standing frozen in the garden, her heart torn between fury and something she dreaded more than captivity, desire. The rain hadn't stopped all day. It battered the mansion's tall windows like a relentless drumbeat, echoing the storm inside Elena's chest. She sat curled in an armchair by the fire, her thoughts replaying the failed escape, the words Damian had spoken, the certainty in his voice. No matter how much she hated him, his presence clung to her like a shadow she couldn't shake. The door creaked. Damian entered quietly, his jacket damp from the rain, his expression unreadable. For once, there were no guards trailing behind him. Just him, alone. Elena tensed, but didn't look away. He poured himself a glass of whiskey from the decanter on the table, the amber liquid catching the firelight. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice low and rough around the edges. You think I don't know what I am, Elena? He swirled the glass slowly, staring into it. You think I enjoy this, the cages, the chains, the control? I don't, her brow furrowed. She had never heard him sound like this. Then why do it? Why trap me? His jaw flexed. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he walked closer, lowering himself into the chair across from hers. When I was 16, he began, his voice distant. My father was gunned down right in front of me. In our own home, I was too young, too weak to stop it. That night, I learned a lesson. Hesitation kills. Mercy kills, freedom is an illusion for people like me. Elena's breath caught. She had expected threats, excuses, maybe lies. But not this. Damian's eyes flickered with something she had never seen before. Pain. Real, unguarded pain. I swore no one would ever take from me again. No one would touch what was mine. That vow shaped everything. The empire, the fear, the walls I've built. He set the glass down with a dull thud. And now you sit here, accusing me of chains. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know how to give anything without shackles. The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. Elena's chest ached. Against her will, she felt the edge of her anger soften. For the first time, she saw not the unshakable Mafia Boss, but the broken boy buried beneath his armor. Still, she forced her voice steady. Your pain doesn't excuse what you've done to me. To others. His lips twitched. Half smirk, half grimace. I know, but don't mistake me for a saint. I don't deserve forgiveness. Their eyes locked. And in that moment, Elena felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but understanding. She hated it. She hated how his vulnerability cracked her defenses, how her heart betrayed her by aching for him. Damian leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. You want the truth? You terrify me, Elena, because you're the only one I can't control. Her breath hitched. You've done nothing but control me. No. His voice sharpened. I can control your body, your surroundings, every guard in this house. But your heart? He shook his head slowly. That's the one thing I can't touch, and it kills me. Elena swallowed hard, torn between fury and an ache she couldn't name. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she felt nothing for him. But the words wouldn't come. The rain pounded harder against the glass, as if the storm outside mirrored the storm inside them both. Damian finally stood, his shadow long against the firelight. I've given you a piece of me tonight, Elena. Don't mistake it for weakness. It's a warning. You can break me or destroy me. The choice is yours. Without another word, he left the room, the echo of his footsteps fading into the storm. Elena sat frozen, her heart racing, her mind torn apart. She had come to despise this man. Yet now she saw his scars, his wounds, the darkness that had built him. And for the first time, she feared not just him, but herself. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city washed clean and glistening under pale sunlight. But inside Elena, the storm still raged. Damian's confession haunted her, his pain, his scars, his unshakable hold on her. She stood by the window of the library, tracing the raindrops that clung to the glass, when a knock broke her thoughts. One of Damian's men stepped in. Boss wants you downstairs. Her stomach tightened. She followed, her mind racing. Every encounter with him felt heavier now, as though each choice she made carried consequences she couldn't yet see. Damian was waiting in the atrium, flanked by two of his lieutenants. A sleek black folder lay open on the table, its contents spread like a map of danger. When he looked up, his eyes met hers, not cold this time, but steady, almost searching. I need your answer, Elena, she frowned. Answer to what? He gestured to the folder. You asked for freedom, for choice. I'm giving you one. Step into my world, stand beside me, or keep fighting me until you break. Her heart skipped. You're giving me an ultimatum. No, he corrected quietly. I'm giving you power. Decide where you stand. She glanced down at the papers. Bank accounts, property ledgers, photographs of rival families, evidence of a life built on blood and shadows. Her stomach churned. You want me to, what, approve of this? I want you to understand it, Damian said, his tone calm but unyielding. If you choose to stay, you'll know the truth of my world. No more cages, no more illusions. But if you choose to fight me, his eyes narrowed. Know that I don't lose battles. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Elena's hands trembled at her sides. She wanted to scream at him, to reject him outright. Yet part of her burned with a terrible curiosity. Her voice was barely above a whisper. And if I walk away? If I try again? Damian stepped closer, his presence pressing into her like a tide. I'll stop you. Every time, because losing you isn't an option. The words cut sharp, both terrifying and intoxicating. One of his lieutenants cleared his throat softly. Boss, we should... Damian silenced him with a look, then turned back to Elena. No one else matters right now. Only you. The silence stretched between them, charged and heavy. Elena's chest heaved as she weighed her choices. She had no illusions. Joining him meant blood, risk, and danger. Refusing him meant endless battles, chains, and a war she wasn't sure she could win. Her heart screamed for freedom. Her body trembled with defiance. And yet, deep inside, something dangerous whispered of a different kind of power, one she might wield if she stepped into his world on her terms. Finally, she lifted her chin, her eyes blazing. If I stand beside you, Damian, it's not because I'm yours. It's because I choose to survive. A flicker of something passed over his face. Respect. Maybe even pride. That's all I ask. Stand beside me. Choose. The words settled like a vow between them. Damian reached out, brushing his fingers lightly over hers. Not forcing, not demanding, just there. The touch sent sparks racing through her veins, and she hated herself for feeling them. Then it begins, he murmured. The lieutenants exchanged glances, sensing the shift. Elena wasn't just a captive anymore. She was part of something bigger. As Damian closed the folder, Elena's heart pounded with the weight of her decision. She hadn't surrendered, but she had stepped onto dangerous ground, and she knew. There was no turning back. The city looked different from Damian's side of the glass. Elena sat in the back of the armored SUV, her reflection caught between skyscrapers and streetlights as they drove downtown. This wasn't the quiet prison of the mansion anymore. Tonight, Damian was taking her into the heart of his empire. Her pulse drummed fast. This was what she'd agreed to, stepping into his world. But she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Damian sat beside her, calm as ever, but his hand rested loosely on the space between them, as though reminding her he was there. Watching. Waiting. The car pulled up to a towering high-rise, glass and steel shimmering in the night. Inside, men in suits greeted Damian with respect that bordered on fear. Elena felt the weight of every gaze that flicked toward her, curious, calculating, cautious. "This is my headquarters," Damian said as the elevator doors closed behind them. "The center of everything I've built." The top floor opened into a vast office, its windows stretching across the city skyline. Maps and monitors lined the walls, glowing softly in the dim light. The room smelled of leather, smoke, and quiet power. Elena stepped inside, her breath catching at the view. The city sprawled beneath them, alive and restless, yet up here everything felt untouchable, controlled. Damian moved behind his desk, his presence commanding the room. This is what it means to stand beside me. Every deal, every risk, every decision. It all flows through this place. Before Elena could respond, the door opened and a man entered. He was tall, broad, his face lined with years of violence. He carried a file and bowed his head slightly toward Damian. "Boss," the man said. "The shipment came in, but there's a problem. Martelli's men tried to intercept." Elena froze. The name Martelli sent a chill down her spine. She'd heard it in whispers before. Another mafia family, rivals, dangerous. Damian's jaw tightened, though his voice stayed calm. "And we dealt with it, but they're testing you, pushing." Damian's gaze flicked to Elena, then back to the man. "Increase security on the docks. Double the watch for the next week." "Yes, boss." The man nodded. But as he left, his eyes lingered on Elena for a moment too long. Damian noticed. His voice turned sharp. "Do you have something to say?" The man stiffened. "No, boss." He left quickly, the tension trailing behind him like smoke. Elena exhaled slowly, her chest tight. This was no game. She was standing in the middle of real danger, real blood. Damian studied her quietly, as though measuring her reaction. "Still think my world is just chains and shadows?" Her voice shook, but she forced strength into it. "It's worse. It's a battlefield." He stepped closer, his presence heavy, magnetic. "And now you're part of it. By choice." Her heart hammered. She wanted to deny it, to push back, but the truth weighed on her. She had chosen, maybe not him, but survival. And survival meant walking this line, no matter how sharp it was. Damian reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was startlingly gentle against the backdrop of steel and danger. "You'll see more, Elena," he murmured. "You'll see everything. And when you do, you'll realize this world isn't just mine anymore. It's ours." Her breath caught. His words wrapped around her like fire and ice, terrifying and irresistible all at once. As the city lights flickered outside, Elena knew she had taken her first step into a world she could never unsee, and deep down, she feared it was already pulling her in. The night sky glowed with restless energy, the city alive beneath the glass windows of Damian's tower. Elena lingered near the edge of his office, her nerves stretched thin from everything she had seen. Damian stood at his desk, speaking quietly with two of his lieutenants. Their tones were sharp, clipped, urgent. She caught fragments, martelli, betrayal, retaliation. Her stomach twisted. Something was coming. Suddenly, the office phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the tension. One of the men answered, his face paling as he listened. He looked to Damian, voice tight. "They've hit the warehouse." Damian's eyes hardened. "Casualties?" The man swallowed. "2 dead, 1 taken." The words struck the room like gunfire. Elena felt her chest seize. "Real lives, real blood." Damian's calm never cracked. "Mobilize." No hesitation. "I'll deal with this myself." The men scattered, barking orders into radios. Damian turned to Elena. For the first time, she saw not just control in his eyes, but something else, steel sharpened into rage. "You're staying here," he ordered. Her voice shook. "And if I don't?" His jaw clenched. "Then you'll see the part of me I've tried to shield you from." But before either could say more, the building itself shook, an explosion booming from the floors below. The windows rattled. Sirens wailed. Shouts erupted in the hallway. Elena's blood turned to ice. What was that? Damian's expression darkened. "They're here." Gunfire cracked in the distance, echoing up the stairwells. Panic surged through the halls. Guards shouted orders, boots pounding against marble. Damian grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her close. "Stay behind me, no matter what." They moved quickly through the corridors, the world outside collapsing into chaos. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs as flashes of armed men stormed through the lower levels. A rival attack. Right here. Right now. They reached the stairwell, but before they could descend, a group of masked men burst from the shadows. Guns raised. Elena froze, her breath trapped in her throat. In an instant, Damian stepped forward, his own weapon drawn. The air filled with thunder as shots rang out. The corridor lit with muzzle flashes, smoke choking the air. Elena pressed herself against the wall, hands over her ears, tears stinging her eyes. She had never been this close to death, never seen the cold finality of violence unfold before her. When the echoes faded, 3 bodies lay still on the floor. Damian stood tall, his gun steady, his face grim but unshaken. He turned to Elena, his voice low, urgent. "Do you see now? This is why I keep you close, because this world will eat you alive if I let go." Her chest heaved, her body trembling uncontrollably. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Damian's hand gripped hers tightly, his eyes burning into hers. "Stay with me, Elena, don't look away. This is the truth you asked for." Her vision blurred with tears. She had thought she could stand beside him, thought she could survive his world. But now, with the smell of smoke and blood filling her lungs, she wasn't sure anymore. They moved again, weaving through chaos until they reached a reinforced door leading to a private exit. Guards cleared the way, shouting updates, but Damian's focus never left her. At last, they burst out into the night air, the city sirens wailing all around them. Helicopters circled in the distance, the skyline lit with chaos. Elena collapsed against the cool stone wall, gasping for breath. Her body shook with shock, her mind reeling. Damian crouched before her, gripping her shoulders. His voice was fierce but low, as though holding her together with words alone. "This is my world, Elena. Death, betrayal, fire, and now it's yours too." Her heart ached, her spirit torn between terror and something darker. An undeniable pull toward the man who had dragged her into the storm, yet shielded her with his life. The night hadn't ended. The city still screamed with sirens, smoke curling into the sky as though the heavens themselves bore witness to the carnage. Elena sat in the back of Damian's armored car, her hands trembling in her lap. Her clothes smelled of gunpowder, her heart still pounding with the sound of bullets that had nearly claimed her life. Across from her, Damian sat in silence, his jaw hard, eyes fixed on the dark streets as they sped past. His men flanked the car, alert, weapons ready, a moving wall of protection. Elena finally found her voice, hoarse and breaking. "You killed them!" Damian's gaze shifted to her, sharp, unflinching. "I saved you." Her breath hitched. She wanted to argue, to scream, but deep down, she knew he was right. Without him, she would have died tonight. Yet something in his words shook her. Saved her? At what cost? The car pulled into the underground garage of his mansion. Guards swarmed around, clearing the area, securing every shadow. Damian stepped out first, then extended his hand to her. Elena hesitated, staring at it. His palm, steady and scarred, was the same hand that had just pulled a trigger without mercy. And yet, the same hand that had shielded her, held her, touched her with unexpected gentleness. Slowly, she placed her trembling hand in his. They walked together into the mansion, silence stretching between them until the heavy doors shut, locking out the chaos of the city. In the grand hall, the silence broke. Damian turned, his dark eyes burning with something fierce, something more dangerous than the guns or the enemies outside. "Elena," he said quietly, "you need to decide. Tonight proved what I've been trying to tell you. My world is not soft. It is blood and loyalty. It will never let you go once you're inside." Her chest tightened. She had seen death tonight. She had felt terror consume her soul, and yet, when she looked at him, she didn't see only violence. She saw the man who had thrown himself into fire to protect her, who carried the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, and still, somehow, reached for her. Tears stung her eyes. "And if I walk away?" she whispered. Damian stepped closer, his voice low, rough, dangerous. "Then I'll let you go. But know this, my enemies won't. You've been seen. You're already marked. Walking away doesn't mean freedom. It means walking into a battlefield without me at your side." Her lips parted, words trapped in her throat. He was right again. There was no going back to her simple life. Not after tonight, not after him. Damian's hand brushed her cheek, tender despite the storm raging in his veins. "So I ask you, Elena, will you stand with me, or against me?" Her heart thundered. The choice was hers. But either way, her life would never be the same. The silence stretched, heavy with fate. Elena's breath trembled as she met his gaze. Somewhere between fear and longing, a spark lit inside her. She hadn't chosen this world. But maybe, just maybe, this world had chosen her. The screen fades to black, her answer left unspoken, her fate hanging in the balance. Call to action, for narration voiceover ending. And that was only the beginning of Elena's dangerous entanglement with Damian, the mafia boss who would burn down a city just to keep her safe. Will she surrender to his dark world, or fight to escape it? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. Subscribe now to BRD Stories Hub, where more heart-pounding, emotional love stories await. Don't miss what comes next.